Well, what can I say? It's good evening, YouTubers. Well, it certainly is where I am. Maybe it's good day where you are in the globe. And yes, this is another vlog, but not in the guidance series. This isn't going to be anything to do with God's holy word or our Lord and Master Yeshua HaMashiach. But it is going to deal with the truth in this world, as close as we can get to it. Because the more you discover, the more you realize how much has been hidden from the masses, and how much skullduggery and wickedness has gone on through history. But the title of this vlog is going to be called Zionism, its history and the truth. Don't know whether I'm going to be able to cover all of it, but I no doubt will be just given a taste. I'm actually reading from this amazing book, which I would urge anyone who wants to know the truth of what's really gone on in this world. It's called The Ruling Elite, and it's by an author called DEANNA Spingola. And it really is an eye-opener. I find it quite a riveting read. It's also very depressing, really, because when you realise the truth of what has happened in this world. And what a time for the phone to ring. I'll have to get back to him, because I want to continue this, because I know this sort of thing is something you can't pause, because if I pause it, it's a fresh recording. Yeah, they may try later, I don't know. They probably won't actually. I'll just give them a quick call. So where was we? Yes, so without further ado, let's begin. Zionism, the non-Semitic Khazars. Many Eastern European Jews are not Semitic and have no genetic connection to Palestine or to Abraham. Numerous revisionist studies, that means a revised opinion because of further investigation, provide adequate evidence, as found in The 13th Tribe by Arthur Koestler and The Ashkenazic Jew, a Slavo-Turkic people in search of a Jewish identity by Paul Wexler. The Jews of Khazaria by Kevin A. Brook, and more recently, The Invention of the Jewish People by Shlomo Sand. Brook presents a logical online essay regarding the origination of the Eastern European Jews, including scholarly opinions from historians in favour of the Khazar theory. You can find this at www.khazaria, that's spelled KHAZARIA.com /Khazar-diaspora.html, and that's as of May 2012. Who knows? With B'nai B'rith and the so-called Anti-Defamation League, maybe it's been taken down, because they seem to be very critical of anyone who questions the established facts, or should we say the official line, which isn't necessarily the truth. It is not about anti-Semitism, an accusatory political weapon utilised to silence unwanted queries and opposition to detrimental Zionist policies. Truth can withstand the most intense scrutiny and does not fear investigation, but rather invites exploration. Governments and other habitually employ suppression under the guise of anti-Semitism accusations to silence truth and conceal mass criminality. People use the term anti-Semite to silence dissent against US government policies as they relate to Israel. Accordingly, criticism of Israeli policies against the Palestinians becomes an attack on all Jews. Shulamite Aloni, Minister of Education from 1992 to 1993 and peace activist, says that calling people dissidents is a defamation tactic used to silence all criticism. If Europeans criticise Israeli policies, people remind them of the Holocaust. If people oppose Israeli policies towards the Palestinians, then people accuse them of anti-Semitism. According to Aloni, Jews habitually remind others of their suffering to justify what they're doing to the Palestinians. And you can see a video about that called It's a Trick, We Always Use It. that meaning calling people anti-Semitic. And you can find it on YouTube. Then again, maybe that's been taken down as we speak. That was from May 2012. But I shall probably look into that, and I can let you know whether it's still there or not. I can give you the actual thing. You would need to type in http www.youtube.com/watch v equals J uppercase U uppercase G uppercase V uppercase P uppercase B uppercase O and 9, and then one of those, how do I explain it, I don't know, we call it a lowercase dash or whatever, like it's one of those ones that look underneath. I think it's called underscore, isn't it? And then lowercase c and then uppercase A. The Khazars, classified by anthropologists as Turco-Finns, are not descendants of Judah, one of the 12 tribes of sons of Israel, but were warlike, violent people who originated in Asia, from where other nations drove them out. In the 1st century, using the route between the north end of the Caspian Sea and the south end of the Ural Mountains, they invaded several agricultural nations in Eastern Europe and occupied about 1 million square miles until about the 7th century. They worshipped the phallic symbol and engaged in sexual excess until King Bulan, because of their moral degeneracy, abolished their idolatry and compelled them to adopt one of 3 monotheistic religions: Islam, Christianity, or Talmudism, or otherwise known as Judaism. They chose the latter as their new state religion. The king then imported rabbis from Babylon, who opened synagogues and instructed 4,000 feudal nobles. You can find out about this if you look at Benjamin H. Friedman's The Truth About Khazars, a letter written to Dr. David Goldstein at 960 Park Avenue, New York City, on October 10, 1954. The converted Khazars remained in Khazaria, and their descendants embraced Judaism, a theocratic religion where leaders functioned as civil administrators. The Talmud, with civil and religious tenets, functioned as a behavior manual in every aspect of their lives. The 1954 Jewish Encyclopedia, Volume 4 states, Khazars, a people of Turkish origin whose life and history are interwoven with the very beginnings of the history of the Jews of Russia. Driven on by the nomadic tribes of the steppes and by their own desire for plunder and revenge. In the second half of the 6th century, the Khazars moved westward. The kingdom of the Khazars was firmly established in most of South Russia long before the foundations of the Russian monarchy in 855 AD. At this time, the kingdom of the Khazars stood at the height of its power and was constantly at war. At the end of the 8th century, the king of the Khazars and his grandees, together with a large number of heathen people, embraced the Jewish religion. By 1016, the Slavs vanquished the Khazars and seized a major portion of their land, which became Poland, Lithuania, the Grand Duchy of Moscow, and other Slavic states. Most of the Khazars remained while others relocated to Kiev and other areas of Russia. The Khazars went northwest into Lithuania, Polish territory, Russia, and Ukraine, and became broadly dispersed in western Russia. The people in Kiev did not want additional Jews in their territory, while the rulers of the Grand Duchy of Moscow pursued and maintained policies to restrict and exclude them from certain areas and prohibited Jewish merchants from travelling within Russia. And the source for that is John Beatty's The Iron Curtain Over America, published by Chestnut Mountain Books in Barboursville, Virginia in 1968. They constructed thousands of synagogues, and their rabbis and their successors maintained absolute domination of the political, social, and religious thinking of their people. The multi-volume Babylonian Talmud was the main reason the Khazars resisted Russian attempts to end separatism, a factor that still dictates their separatism elsewhere. The Babylonian Talmud, different from the Jerusalem or Palestinian Talmud, contains centuries of fundamental religious and cultural dogma. While many Jews in Mesopotamia assimilated, the Khazars refused to surrender their identity through Russianization or by becoming Christian. The rabbis instituted the ghettoization of the people, not the Russians or other host countries. The majority of the ethnic Jews in modern-day Iraq, parts of Syria, Turkey and southwestern Iran long ago embraced Islam, making many of today's Muslims and Christian Arabs ethnic Jews. The Khazars adamantly rejected assimilation in order to retain their unique identity. The rabbis realized that they would lose their power over their people if they accepted other authorities. They dictated fundamental traditions, daily practices, rules and beliefs about God, man and the universe, what to wear, what to eat or not eat, how to conduct business, when one may marry, and how to observe the holidays and Sabbaths. They referred to these practices as halakha. The Khazars lived under the Babylonian Talmudic law as a population living in Russia, a state within a state. After the fall of Kiev in 1240, Moscow became the capital. The Khazars, through time, hated the Russians, whose country they lived in, and became known as Russian Jews. In 1613, Russian nobles, to establish a durable government, elected Mikhail Romanov as their Tsar. The Romanovs ruled through the 17th and 18th centuries and retained their attitude towards the Khazars. Peter the Great, from 1682 to 1725, referred to them as rogues and cheats. The Romanov dynasty from 1613 to 1917 included Catherine the Great's grandson, Alexander I, from 1801 to 1825, his brother Nicholas I, from 1825 to 1855, his son Alexander II from 1855 to 1881, his son Alexander III from 1881 to 1894, and his son Nicholas II, 1894 to 1917, who the Bolsheviks, predominantly Jewish, would murder along with his family on July 17, 1918, after they seized power in Russia. Many Khazars of Russia moved into Germany, the home of a Jewish philosopher, Moses Mendelssohn, from 1729 to 1786. He appealed to many non-Jews as well as Jews. He believed that the Jews had erected about themselves a mental ghetto to balance the physical ghetto around them. His goal was to guide the Jews out of this mental ghetto into the wide world of general culture, without, however, doing harm to their culture. People refer to this movement as Haskalah, or Enlightenment. He encouraged the Jews in Germany to learn the language instead of using an altered form of the vernacular. He translated the Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers and Deuteronomy into German. This you can find in John Beatty's book that I mentioned previously. In Russia, Isaac B. Levinson, an advocate of Mendelssohn's views, along with Abraham Harkavy, researched Jewish history and their settlement in Russia and discovered that they were not from Germany as previously believed, but from the banks of the Volga. During the 19th century, Tsars vacillated on their attitudes regarding the Jewish state within a state. Nicholas I was less lenient than Alexander I towards the Jews, but showed interest in Levinson's Haskalah movement because he saw it as a way of eradicating Jewish separatism. However, Jews in Germany, including Moses Hess, opposed the movement, as many did in Russia, and evolved into radical nationalists. Nicholas I appointed Dr. Max Lilienthal to educate the Jews, with the opening of hundreds of schools to help eradicate their fanaticism and superstitions. Their leaders opposed it because it would diminish the Talmud's authority and correct morals, and the rabbis would lose their control. The Jews, who viewed Lilienthal as a traitor and informer, opposed the government intrusion into their spiritual lives. In 1884, he had second thoughts about the project, thus ending the Haskalah movement and Russia's efforts to defeat the Khazar separatism. There have always been Jews in Jerusalem, Safed, Nablus and Hebron. Individual immigration to the area has never ceased. Thousands of Jews had settled peacefully and assimilated in Palestine before others ever viewed the area as an exclusive designated Jewish homeland. Professor Heinrich Gretz, a Jewish historian, writes in his History of the Jews that when Jews in other countries heard a rumor about the Jews in Khazaria, they believed them to be the lost 10 tribes, possibly the foundation for the belief that Palestine was the homeland of these converted Khazars. In 1948, Benjamin H. Friedman addressed a large audience at the Pentagon, including high-ranking army and military intelligence officers, regarding the developing situation in the Middle East. He explained the origin of the Khazars so they would have a comprehensive understanding and be able to evaluate the events that had occurred since 1917, starting with the Bolsheviks in Russia and ultimately culminating in Palestine. That, yet again, quoted from Benjamin H. Friedman's The Truth About Khazars. And the part about the immigration can be found in Walter Laqueur's A History of Zionism, From the French Revolution to the Establishment of the State of Israel. That's published by MJF Books in New York in 1972. One wonders whether these books are still available, actually, or whether they've been taken out of print. It wouldn't surprise me. I wouldn't say that I'm going to be purchasing all of them, but I'm considering purchasing some of them because it'd be good to see. This is what I think how Yeshua, I'm always going to talk about him even in a subject like this, said that the truth will set you free. He said, because when you know the truth about things, no one can, have one over on you. No one can dominate you or control you. Because when they come with you with a lie, you can say, "I'm sorry, I don't agree. I don't believe that. That's a lie." I already know the story about that, or whatever. Whatever it is. Let's continue. British Zionism, the genesis of the movement. For centuries, the Christian world opposed any kind of Jewish settlement in the Holy Land, as it would certainly place the control of the traditional Christian holy sites under Jewish jurisdiction. With the establishment of the Enlightenment philosophy, Napoleon Bonaparte, a Freemason, initiated into the Army Philadelphia Lodge in 1798, while camped near Acre, announced in a written proclamation to the Jews dated April 20th, 1799, that he was going to restore Palestine to them. The source of that is Stephen Sizer's book, that's Sizer, Christian Zionism and the Roadmap to Armageddon. That's published by InterVarsity Press, Downers Grove, Illinois, in 2005. He ascended the throne as Emperor of France from 1804 to 1815. On October 6, 1806, the Assembly of Notables, a group of people who consulted with the French Emperor on state matters, issued a proclamation to Europe's Jewish communities inviting them to send delegates to the Sanhedrin, scheduled for October 20th in Paris. However, the meeting did not take place until February 9th, 1807, when 100 rabbis and 25 laypeople from various parts of Europe met to authorize, on behalf of world Jewry, any compact made with Napoleon or presumably other government leaders who would support them. Joseph David Sinzheim, the chief rabbi of Strasbourg and a prominent member of the Assembly of Notables, presided at the meeting. Once assembled, like the ancient Sanhedrin, it became a legal assembly vested with power of passing ordinances in order to promote the welfare of Israel. Despite the diaspora, the Sanhedrin exercises authority over Jews worldwide. The Jewish Sanhedrin functions today with judges, financiers, intellectuals, orators and politicians who hold meetings where they devise essential requirements for the welfare of Israel. I say so-called welfare of Israel because it's definitely an agenda. And you can find out more about this if you look in the Jewish Encyclopedia about Isidore Singer and Cyrus Adler. The Jewish Encyclopedia is a descriptive record of the history, religion, literature and customs of the Jewish people from the earliest times to the present day. It's published by Funk and Wagnall's Company in England in 1905. Probably out of print. Sorry about that. But who knows, I suppose you're prepared to pay serious money for it. You could probably get older copies of these books. In 1798, for economic advancement, Nathan M. Rothschild, son of the Rothschilds banking family living in Frankfurt, relocated to Manchester, England, where he soon operated a large textile and export firm. At the same time, Joseph Frey, an Orthodox Polish Jew and a student of Johannes Janik of the Berlin Missionary Society, had converted to Christianity by receiving baptism in New Brandenburg on May 8, 1798. Frey moved to England in 1801. Rothschild also moved to London, where he became a Freemason in the Lodge of Emulation on October 4, 1802. And the source of this is William R. Denslow's 10,000 Famous Freemasons, Volume 4, Q to Z. Foreword by Harry S. Truman, Past Master, Missouri Lodge of Research, McCoy Publishing and Masonic Supply Company Incorporated, Richmond, Virginia, published in 1957. You can also see Two Faces of Freemasonry by John Daniel, published by Day Publishing, Longview, Texas, in 2007. In 1805, Frey created the Missionary Society and asked to be a missionary to the Jews. He claimed that Christianity fulfilled the prophecies recorded in the Old and New Testaments. The local synagogues prohibited the activities of their former religionists, and Frey only baptized 3 Jews in 1806. The synagogue issued another prohibition in 1807, and thereafter about a dozen Jewish children stopped attending the non-denominational free school that the missionaries had opened. By August 17, 1808, Rothschild had become a financial advisor to the British government, and in 1811 he sold his Manchester textile concerns. The Rothschilds frequently fund organisations, even so-called Christian groups, and maintain their typical anonymity behind a non-Jew founder. In 1809, Frey organised the London Society for Promoting Christianity Among the Jews, which he later shortened to the Jew Society. This new, apparently well-funded organisation, possibly supported by Rothschild funds, advocated the concept of Jewish settlement in Palestine. The Jews in England, many of whom had arrived there from Holland, had relative freedom beginning in the 18th century. The society focused its efforts primarily on the Ashkenazim, that's Jews of German or Eastern European origin, while largely ignoring the Sephardim, that's Jews of Spanish or Portuguese origin, many of whom readily embraced Christianity. The Ashkenazi Jews resisted the society's efforts. Others energetically advanced the new evangelical movement, which quickly spread to America. To find out more about this, consult Robert Michael Smith's book, The London Jew Society and Patterns of Jewish Conversion in England from 1801 to 1859. It's in part of Jewish Social Studies from the Indiana University Press, Volume 43, numbers 3 to 4, summer to autumn of 1981. I suppose you might find these things on websites, I don't know. I'm only giving you these sources so that if you want to look up and learn more from these nuggets, because that's what this is really. This is a collection of historical nuggets that, probably would lead you to the, what gives you a clear picture of how certain individuals have, with an agenda, manipulated the masses into their, their desires, basically. Even as we saw here, proclaiming to be Christian. The Jew Society became the Church's Ministry Among Jewish People, or the CMJ. The society, with as many as 250 missionaries, began proselytizing to the Jews in the East End of London, and soon spread to Europe, South America, Africa and Palestine. The CMJ promoted the opinion that Jewish people should have their own independent state in the Holy Land, long before certain Jews established the Zionist movement. Even before the final Battle of Waterloo on June 18, 1815, several individuals in Britain had already adopted Napoleon's idea of restoring Palestine to the Jews. Rothschilds allegedly provided the funds that guaranteed the victory at Waterloo. He had established a courier service that allowed the brothers to have a daily communication which gave them major advantages over their competitors. Napoleon lost the war and had to rescind his promise to restore the Jews to Palestine. Thereafter, apparently with a change of heart, he tried to eliminate Jacobinism, a belief in a nationally uniform and centralised government in France, and its plan for world government, and acquired other benefactors. Rothschild, by 1815, opposed him and funded the opposition. There were other conversionist charitable organisations, including the National School Society charity schools of the established church, the Episcopal Jews Chapel of 1813, and the school at Palestine Place in Bethnal Green. A couple of sources here. A bit about Rothschild having an advantage over knowing who won the Battle of Waterloo. I would suggest you read Denise Sylvester Carr's The Rise of Rothschild, History Today, Volume 48, Issue 3 of March 1998, page 33 onwards. And also regarding this Jew Society, read David S. Katz, The Jews in the History of England, from 1845 to 1850, Oxford University Press, New York, 1996, pages 370 to 371. Louis Way was the most prominent exponent of 19th century restorationism and Christian Zionism. He rescued the Jew Society from a £20,000 debt. After the Napoleonic Wars, he advocated Jewish emancipation and their relocation to Palestine. He promoted his idea to European political leaders and attempted to gain their support for a Jewish homeland. Tsar Alexander I of Russia agreed with him. In 1817, Way persuaded the Tsar to issue two documents, one that guaranteed protection to all baptized Jews and one that gave them land they could farm. Further, Way wrote Mémoires sur l'état de l'Israël des présidents élus majestés impériales et réales réunis au Congrès d'Aix-la-Chapelle of 1819, in which he stressed the messianic significance of the Jews. Way asserted their importance to scriptural promises and the eventual realization of prophecy. He pleaded for their emancipation in Europe. In October 1818, Way presented his ideas to the Congress of Aix-la-Chapelle and to the Tsar, who gave the documents to his representatives, including Ioannis Kapodistrias, but nothing ever came of it. British banker Henry Drummond Jr., a Member of Parliament in 1810, was reputedly Meyer Amschel Rothschild's connection through Drummond's father, Henry Sr., a Rothschild colleague and fabric contractor who made money selling military uniforms and financing the rental of Hessian soldiers for the Revolutionary War through Frederick II. Drummond bankers were then working with the British Treasury to oversee payments to British soldiers in America. Drummond, possibly a Rosicrucian, which was akin to Freemasonry, had Zionist interests. Between 1821 and 1823, Drummond sent Bavarian-born Joseph Wolff, the son of a rabbi and a Christian convert, to Jerusalem. In 1822, the Rothschilds unveiled the Star of David, the hexagram symbol of Zionism, now the flag of the Israeli state, as their family emblem. And you can find more about this in Simon Downing's book World Empire and the Return of Jesus Christ. That's published by Zulon Press of 2011. There is no evidence in the Bible that shows any connection between this ancient occult image and King David. However, King Solomon, when he later adopted pagan gods and occult practices, used the image. Wolff prophesied that Jesus would return to Jerusalem in 1847 in conjunction with the beginning of the millennium and the restoration of Israel. In 1823, as recommended by Wolff, the Jew Society recruited John Nicolason and sent him to Berlin for training before sending him to Jerusalem to work with George Dalton, a missionary to the Jews, who unexpectedly died on January 25, 1826, just before Nicolason arrived. More on that you can find with the Malta Family History, an index of Protestant cemetery in Jerusalem. That's on a website. It's http://website.line1.net/Stephanie Bidmead/Jerusalem.htm as of May 2012. Some people suspect that foul play was involved in Dalton's death so that Nicolason could more effectively manage the Jew Society operations in Jerusalem. The Society moved Nicolason to Jerusalem permanently, where he took over its operations. Assisted by Lord Shaftesbury, Anthony A. Cooper, the Society constructed Christ Church, completed in 1849 in Old Jerusalem, on land purchased by Nicolason, a short distance from the temple site. It is the Middle East's oldest Protestant church. Although Nicolason stayed in Palestine to manage the resettlement of the Jews, the Sultan would not allow it, and the Zionist plan collapsed. As a side note, I'm just reading this and I'm just thinking about Jesus' words, in Revelation when he gives the messages to the churches. Does he not say about the Nicolaitans and how he's, I'm sorry I forget whether it was the church of Pergamon but how he says that, he's disappointed with one aspect of them, but he's pleased them that they hate the Nicolaitans because he says I too am against that sect. And they say, oh well, what's the name? But isn't it interesting that this guy's name is Nicolason? Was there was his distant relatives or sort of say ancestors Nicolaitans? It's. I try to get this cross bit because most people see the things see things as like, oh, it's just a coincidence, it just happened, but I really do believe that God sets up things, and there's no such thing as coincidence. Everything happens for a reason, and it's all because it's all part of God's plan. You see, as he's already stated, he declares the ending from the beginning. So, it's like I fellowship with certain Christians, and I think to myself, you don't, you think that you're going to, change the world for God. But God has already said that, this world is condemned. This world is not going to change. It's only going to change for the worse. And it's going to get worse until Jesus comes and makes things all things new. So really, I feel that these people are actually working against God. All we should be doing is living by example, allowing Jesus to work through us, so that people can, get to know Jesus through us, through our speech, our actions. It's like Jesus said. He said, whatever you eat, that doesn't defile you. It's what you think. That's the problem. This is the battlefield here. And sadly, most people just latch on to what someone else tells them, and they believe it. They accept it as truth, even when it's a downright lie, because they don't bother to seek the truth. Let's continue. Where was we? Sorry. It is in the Middle East oldest Protestant. It is the Middle East's oldest Protestant church. Although Nicolason stayed in Palestine to manage the resettlement of the Jews, the Sultan would not allow it, and the Zionist plan collapsed. Sorry if I repeat myself there. Pastor Johannes Yannick of the Burning Missionary Society, who had trained Frey, also trained Nicolason. This suggests that Pastor Yannick was a principal in the Illuminati operations in Germany to train men in pseudo-Christianity. It is particularly significant that Frey supposedly converted to Christianity the same year that Rothschild relocated to England as directed by his father. While many people claim that Jews currently exploit Christian Zionists to further Zionism, its beginning started much earlier. In 1830, Drummond founded the Apostolic Church and nurtured the Jews' Society, which probably had little to do with converting Jews to Christ. Rather, it appears to have been a vehicle for the implementation of a counterfeit millennium. Jews detest the idea of Christian conversion, but Zionism rather than Jewish evangelism was the Society's priority. On February 5, 1840, Father Thomas, a French citizen and the superior of a Franciscan convent in Damascus, and his servant disappeared. The French consul there began an investigation in the Jewish quarter, during which officials extorted confessions through torture. People refer to this event as the Damascus Affair. Some of the Jewish victims, to escape further torture, confessed to murdering the two individuals. Meanwhile, angry residents destroyed the local synagogue. Lionel Rothschild, Moses Montefiore's nephew, convinced the British government that it should respond to the Damascus Affair in order to assist the persecuted Jews and the missionaries of the Jew Society in Muslim countries. Montefiore and the Rothschilds initiated a campaign to defend Jews in Syria, wherein Jews from around the world participated to aid their brethren. Eventually, wealthy Jews utilized this tragic event to unite the Jews and target attention on the minority Jewish populations in Palestine, Russia, Romania, and other places. Apparently, for the first time in history, wealthy Jews, such as the Rothschilds and the Montefiores, could lend support. Albert Cohn first settled in Paris in 1836 and instructed three of Baron James de Rothschild's children in Hebrew and Jewish history. By 1839, Rothschild had placed Cohn, a dedicated Zionist, in charge of his extensive charities, a position he retained until his death in 1877. Lionel Rothschild, Nathan's son, sent Joseph Wolff, already in the area, and Cohn with a delegation to Israel to give assistance to the Jews in the area because of the Damascus Affair. Cohn developed a lifelong association with the Rothschilds. Lord Palmerston, Henry J. Temple sent British troops to Palestine soon after Shaftesbury persuaded the British government to open a consulate in Jerusalem from 1838 to 1839. More can be found on this if you go to the book by M. Verite. Why was a British consulate established in Jerusalem? The English Historical Review, Volume 85, Number 335 of April 1970, pages 316 to 345. Given the Rothschild influence in the government, they might have suggested that the Queen appoint a Protestant British bishop in Jerusalem. The Freemasons also supported the proposal. Both Palmerston and Shaftesbury were involved in Freemasonry. Lord Palmerston, urged by Lord Shaftesbury, asked the Ottoman Sultan Abdul-Mesid I, from 1839 to 1861, if the British Jews could relocate to Ottoman Palestine. On August 11, 1840, Lord Palmerston wrote to the British ambassador at Constantinople regarding the Jews. He wrote, "There exists at the present time among the Jews dispersed over Europe a strong notion that the time is approaching when their nation is returned to Palestine. It be of manifest importance to the Sultan to encourage the Jews to return and to settle in Palestine because the wealth which they would bring with them would increase the resources of the Sultan's dominions. I have to instruct your Excellency strongly to recommend to the Turkish government hold out every just encouragement to the Jews of Europe to return to Palestine." The Sultan rejected the request. If you want to learn more about this, Barbara W. Tuchman's book, Bible and Sword, England and Palestine from the Bronze Age to Balfour, published by Ballantine Books, a division of Random House in 1956 and reprinted in 1984, so might be still available. On August the 17th, 1840, a newspaper published a report saying that the British government was considering a restoration of Jews to Palestine. Apparently, Lord Shaftesbury, who had religious motivations, persuaded Lord Palmerston to intercede along with newspaper support. Shaftesbury, related to two prime ministers, had visions of Britain restoring Israel and redeeming humanity according to his interpretation of ancient biblical prophecy. Clergyman Alexander Keith of the Church of Scotland, in his 1843 book, The Land of Israel According to the Covenant with Abraham, with Isaac and with Jacob, implied that the Holy Land was unpopulated, despite the fact that he had been there in 1839 and must have noticed the inhabitants. In 1841, Queen Victoria appointed Michael Alexander as the Protestant bishop in Jerusalem, as suggested by King Frederick William IV of Prussia. Reported the Jew Society and the German Rothschilds persuaded King Frederick and the Lutherans to establish Protestant representation in Jerusalem, akin to the Vatican. The Earl of Shaftesbury, the president of the Jew Society, brought the support of numerous friends to achieve this Jerusalem appointment. His father-in-law, Lord Palmerston, avidly supported Zionism and Jewish settlement. The Damascus affair, a terrible but not necessarily isolated instance against minorities, laid the indispensable foundation for the creation of a Jewish state. England, a historically imperialistic country, in addition to its religious interest in the Holy Land, saw economic, political and colonial opportunities as early as 1840. Cohen made numerous visits to Jerusalem. In 1854, rich European Jews and the Rothschilds would send him to Jerusalem to evaluate missionary activities, financially assist the Christian missionaries and establish a hospital, a society of manual workers, a girls' school and a loan society. Lord Palmerston was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom twice, from 1855 to 1858 and 1859 to 1865, and the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs 3 times, from 1830 to 1834, 1835 to 1841, and 1846 to 1851. On July 13, 1841, he signed the Straits Convention, wherein 5 countries agreed to the permanent closure of the straits to all warships. This superseded the Treaty of Unkier-Skelessi, signed on July 8, 1833, between Russia and the Ottoman Empire, through which Tsar Nicholas I sought to preserve the authority and territorial integrity of the existing states in Europe and the Near East. The treaty also initiated an 8-year alliance between Russia and the Ottoman Empire, calling for Russian aid if another country attacked the Sultan. The Tsar hoped that this alliance would keep the straits in the hands of the Ottomans and French and British warships out of the straits. They did not renew the treaty, which paved the way for the Crimean War. Samuel Morse, an American counterintelligence officer, admitted that an extensive British espionage network functioned in America before the Civil War, with B'nai B'rith as its centre. It incorporated the leading figures in the Democrat Party, Southern secessionists, abolitionists and others, all attempting to destroy America. Palmerston, then Foreign Minister, with B'nai B'rith's help, created the International Zionist Movement by 1860. He allegedly helped create Zionism, only one of numerous Masonic-based cults, some Jewish and some Christian, which agents disseminated throughout Europe and America. Freemasons created B'nai B'rith as an extension of the Jewish rite of Freemasonry in America. And for more on that, you can find in Jennifer Golov's book, Japanese Attitudes Towards Jews, the Pacific Rim Institute of the American Jewish Committee. Just in case we have a power problem here. It's getting low, so it's time to power it up, as they say. I can't put the power one. It's got to be the power one. Sorry about this. Doesn't help this poor light. It's got to be the power one. That's it. Just checking. Yeah. Okay. Let's continue. Where was we? The British and their collaborators who refuted the idea of simulation were determined to retain exclusivity and distinctiveness by design and by institutionalization through numerous Jewish organizations based on the Zionist notion of the Promised Land of Palestine as the only way for Jews to attain true salvation. To implement the concept, Jews in America established benevolent societies to indoctrinate, and may I just point out that, in fact, I'm going to put so-called. So, in other words, both that Promised Land of Palestine and benevolent societies are so-called, yeah, because they're inverted commas. So, continue, yeah. So, Jews in America established so-called benevolent societies to indoctrinate newly arrived Jewish immigrants from the pogroms and ghettos of Europe, the same scheme that the Montefiores and others carried out with the aid of British politicians in England. However, Jews already living in America demonstrated intense animosity towards the new immigrants who realized there was more opportunity in America than in Europe. Therefore, the schemers had to devise a subversive program using the B'nai B'rith to counter the natural desire of the immigrants to assimilate and achieve. For more on this, please read Paul Goldstein's book B'nai B'rith, British Weapon Against America. You'll find that at http://www.campaigner-b'rith_Brith_America.htm, and that's as of May 2012. B'nai B'rith's International's current president is Alan J. Jacobs, a resident of Lake Forest, Illinois. More on that. Find B'nai B'rith International elects new president Alan J. Jacobs, long-time leader, now assumes top position. You'll find that at B'nai B'rith's website. He was, 23rd of May 2011 he was elected. Its headquarters are in Chicago. It has had a voice in the UN since its inception. You'll find also more about this in Juri Lena's book Architects of Deception, which is published by Referent Publishing in Stockholm, Sweden in 2004. In July 1853, Lord Shaftesbury had written to Foreign Minister George H. Gordon telling him that Greater Syria was a country without a nation, inverted commas, that needed a nation without a country, inverted commas, meaning the Jews. A year later, an individual writing in a Presbyterian magazine said, "Surely the land without a people and the people without a land are intended soon to meet and mutually possess each other." In 1858, Horatius Bonar, a Scottish churchman and poet, promoted the repatriation of Israel. "We have a people without a country as well as a country without a people." In 1881, American William Blackstone, advocated the restoration of Palestine to the Jewish population while deploring the persecution of Jews in Russia. He wrote about a land without a people and a people without a land, in inverted commas. In 1884, George S. Bowes, author and Cambridge University clergyman, referred to a land without a people without a land, while advocating the restoration of the Jews to Palestine. And you can find more about this in Diana Moore's book, or maybe it's a magazine publication, A Land Without a People for a People Without a Land, Middle East Quarterly, spring 2008. Others in American Britain, mostly from privileged backgrounds, used the phrase, and it became common by the late 19th century, especially among Christians. In 1901, American missionary Harlan P. Beach, a graduate of Phillips Academy, Yale, and Andover Theological Seminary, wrote that the Jews will, in God's good time, inhabit the land of their forefathers. Otherwise, we can offer no valid explanation of a people without a land, and the land without a people. In 1902, Winifred Graham penned a novel, The Zionist, in which her Jewish hero addresses the Zionist Congress and requests the return of the people without a country to the country without a people. The first Zionist to use the phrase, Palestine is a country without a people, the Jews are a people without a country, was Israel Zangwill, a British humorist and writer, in 1901 in the New Liberal Review. Augustus H. Strong, head of the Rochester Theological Seminary, was a friend and beneficiary of John D. Rockefeller, who donated thousands of dollars to that institution. And a source of that is the New York Times on November the 15th, 1899, where it says, Rockefeller gives $150,000 to Rochester Theological Seminary, must raise an equal amount, he states. Also, within the same publication, it says Rockefeller gives $90,000 offered to duplicate any amount raised by Rochester Seminary. Also from the New York Times, January 2nd, that was from January 2nd, 1901. In 1912, Strong utilized the phrase, a land without a people for a people without a land, which a Christian journalist repeated in a prominent article in the Washington Post on December 12, 1917. Barbara W. Tuchman wrote Bible and Sword, England and Palestine from the Bronze Age to Balfour, published in 1956, which portrays Britain's centuries-old involvement with the people known as the Israelites. Whether she depicts history accurately or not, she certainly promoted the so-called prophesied acquisition of Palestine, previously under Ottoman control, by just one of the Israelite tribes, the so-called returning Jews. Her grandfather, Henry Morgenthau Sr., a member of the infamous Pilgrim Society, was in the unique position of as ambassador to the Ottoman Empire from 1913 to 1916, and certainly influenced its domestic and foreign policies. Individuals typically underestimate or fail to understand the impact that ambassadors, persuasive high-ranking diplomats, have in their host countries. Tuchman wrote that Shaftesbury, part of the so-called ruling aristocracy, really believed that he was his so-called brother's keeper. While that seems incredibly noble and seemingly justified by Cain's question, am I my brother's keeper, most people recognize that Cain was a murderer and therefore assume that he was in error regarding the stewardship concept. The word keeper implies total control, the custodial care that one exercises over zoo animals or jail prisoners. While we, as individuals, should lift one another's burdens, government officials should never assume dominion or control over other people's lives. The role of a benefactor appears magnanimous, but always places growing obligations upon the recipients who gradually become dependent rather than free and self-governing. Christian Zionism became a principal factor in American evangelism because of 5 factors. 1. John Nelson Darby, an Anglo-Irish evangelist, visited the United States where he disseminated radical dispensational ideas and a restoration of Israel. 2. James Brooks, Dwight L. Moody, Cyrus Schofield and Blackstone had prophecy conferences and Bible schools and founded Christian Zionism, which merged with the evangelical establishment. 3. Christian Zionists adopted Schofield's reference Bible, which promoted dispensationalism. 4. Lewis F. Schaeffer, Charles Ryrie, John Walvoord, and others justified Christian Zionism through schools like the Dallas Theological Seminary and the Moody Bible Institute. 5. Contemporary Christian Zionism evolved through the writings of Hal Lindsey and Tim LaHaye and a multitude of agencies such as Jews for Jesus. So that gives you a bit of an idea of how this has all began. This is quite, you can see this is quite a tome, yeah. So you know, it would take forever and a day to share all with you, but see, because then it goes on to, you know, more, you know, as it says, organising circumstances behind the scenes, and this is how these things operate. But that's what I think I'm going to do. I just want to give brief pointers, and then obviously I would encourage all those who come across this and think this is educational and enlightening to purchase a copy. And by the way, I don't get any royalties or any tapbacks, so please don't think that. Well, I hope you found this interesting and enjoyable, and I'll be speaking to you soon. So may you have a restful evening or a blessed day, depending on what part of the world you're in, and it's bye for now.